Good morning, Raptor Freak Alexiot's here. Friday Freakout. Wah! Today I wanted to freak out about Jalen Rose a little bit because he's been linked to the Raptors in the news this week because of his asinine show with Jacoby and Jalen or whatever, and they're trolling Raptors Nation right now with this fake trade that they did on a phone call, like where Jacoby calls up Jalen, and Jacoby is supposed to be Brooklyn, he's supposed to be Toronto, and then Jalen's supposed to be Brooklyn, and Jacoby's coming at him with like Scotty Barnes and Pascal Siakam for Kevin Durant, and he's saying no, that's not enough, and it's just really a stupid segment, first of all, because it's not the offer that Masai Ujiri gave to Brooklyn. So it doesn't make any sense. And then they just take the opportunity to kind of like make Toronto look stupid or try to like troll us. He's basically trying to get a rise out of people like me and you and people that care about the Raptors. And why is he doing this? And like, why did they waste airtime on such a dumb segment this week? Well, let's think about it. We talked a lot about ESPN and their mandates and how they deal with the Toronto Raptors. You know, watching Mark Jones call the game, the last Summer League game, he still was getting Raptor players' names completely wrong, like calling DJ Wilson Delano Banton at times. And just like, that's part of it. The ESPN has always kind of slighted the Raptors by getting them wrong. Like they'll confuse OG Anunoby and Pascal Siakam on purpose. And there's all kinds of different ways, whether it's not learning the players' names or, just different things they do. They give incorrect information about them. They're always like never exactly right with their coverage of the Raptors. Either, some way they're either poo-pooing them, putting them down, or they're getting them incorrect with the facts in different ways like that. But I wanted to look at this a little bit more so you guys would understand why Jalen Rose is not a fan of the Raptors and why he continues as a media member to do these kind of things to us, and that he's one of these guys that's really bad to the Raptors and the media in the US. Well, let's look at his life. Early on in his life, he was born in Michigan and he grew up in Detroit. And Detroit is a border city with Canada. There's Detroit, Windsor. And I don't know if he was crossing the border very much as a child. It probably was one of these weird things where Canada's over there. And that's the other people. And the border kind of had an influence maybe on his life in living in Detroit. And as a kid, who knows how many times him and his family or got the opportunity to jump the border and go over to Canada and see what it was actually like. So there's always been kind of like, it's not like a North Korea, South Korea kind of thing, but it is a very much like there's a border, there's a difference. This is America. This is Canada on this side. And that was always it's not a versus, but that's a difference. That's something that shaped his image of Canada is living on a border city with Canada. And it may be that he didn't get a whole lot of opportunities to broaden his horizons and come over to Canada and see what it was like at a young age. It was just a foreign alien place to him that was over there. And that, I think that would shape somebody to a degree, like even more so than somebody who's in like Topeka, Kansas, because the border, you can see it physically over there. And it may be, I don't know his situation. I know his father was not involved in his life. His father was the first pick in the NBA draft, Jimmy Walker, from way, way long time ago. He never met his father. He talked to his father on the phone a couple of times, and then his father died before he actually got to connect with him and start things. So I don't know what kind of life he grew up in Detroit. So, all right, let's fast forward a bit. Jalen's a great player. He played for the Fab Four at Michigan. Fab Five, the Fab Five. And, he was played in the NBA for a couple of years. He played for the Indiana Pacers and went to the NBA Finals with the Pacers and lost to the Lakers in 2000. So he already had this great career ahead of him. Like he was a scorer. He was a dependable pro. He had been on good playoff teams. He had been in the playoffs for a couple of years in a row. And then he went to Chicago. And Chicago was in a weird place. They were kind of in a weird place, but so was Toronto. And then all of a sudden he got traded to Toronto in 2005. And this wasn't necessarily what Jalen Rose wanted. I'm going to tell you that right now. I don't think he ever wanted to be traded to Toronto, and that he wasn't happy about it. Now, I got to give him credit. Unlike Chauncey Billups, unlike Alonzo Mourning, unlike other people in the history of the Raptors who refused to really come here and give a good effort or play. Well, Chauncey did come here and played here for a bit, but he didn't really want to be here either. Jalen came and gave a good effort, and he tried to play here. And at that time, we got to remember the era of the Raptors franchise when he played here was a very interesting time. In fact, it was a very much a flux time. It was between the Carter era and the Bosh era. And in fact, there was a year where Jalen Rose was on the Raptors with both Vince Carter and Chris Bosh. And in your mind, you would think, wow, Jalen Rose, Chris Bosh, and Vince Carter all on the same team at the same time. They must have been badass. Well, they weren't. They were horrible. And part of the reason why was because of the management of the Raptors and the coach. That we had really, like, we didn't have Masai Ujiri and Nick Nurse kind of stuff. We had the opposite of it at that time. And maybe this is part of the reason why we strove so hard to get a Masai Ujiri, to get a Nick Nurse, those foundational people in those positions that make your organization really good. Because at the time when Jalen Rose came to Toronto, when he didn't want to get traded here, it was Kevin O'Neill and Rob Babcock. Two of the worst people that did those positions in the Toronto Raptors history. And, you know, this is the thing. Like, he's playing with Vince. And Vince had been at Toronto for a while. Things have been great. Vince loved the city. I think that Jalen Rose and his sourness about Canada and about being on Toronto may have tainted Vince Carter to a degree and started this whole tanking thing with Vince Carter. That, like, Jalen, here's a veteran, a guy who went to the finals and played against the Lakers, a guy who's respected around the league. All of a sudden, he's on the Raptors, and he's inside the team, and he's probably putting it down inside the team. He's probably shaping Vince Carter's opinion of the team even more so when he showed up. So I think that Jalen Rose may have been a factor in the reason why Vince Carter quit on the Raptors. That he's like, you know, this house is on fire, Vince. Why are you even trying right now and stuff like that? Because Vince did change once Jalen Rose showed up. He was trying and playing and was a good Raptor citizen. And even with the bad coach at Kevin O'Neill, who got fired and they left, and then Sam Mitchell came in, and things got even worse for Jalen Rose. And this is the thing. Vince demanded a trade, and what he gave up. And then we made that stupid, shitty-ass trade with New Jersey. And Vince all of a sudden started playing better again, and he was stateside. It was almost like Jalen Rose told him, you're American. You shouldn't be here in Canada playing for this Canadian dinosaur team. You need to go back to the States and be a superstar down there. Is like his advice for him. I'll bet you this is the kind of stuff that was talked about on the Raptors, even though they were Raptors. There was no loyalty. There was no allegiance to the Raptors at this time. So why wouldn't Jalen Rose come in as a vet and talk down the team from the inside and shape a young Vince Carter's head about what he should be doing with his career? You know, and then it gets even worse. He was around when Chris Bosh was here in his early seasons as a Raptor. I'll bet he formed some opinions about Toronto deep down for Chris Bosh also because of the way he looked at the whole situation. And that Chris never really took to Toronto either, and is similar to Vince, that doesn't have a really that deep of a respect in the way that somebody like Kyle Lowry or DeMar DeRozan or Fred VanVleet has for the city of Toronto. That Chris never really respected Toronto either. And that's partly because when he came in, Jalen Rose was disrespecting Toronto on the team from the inside then too, probably. That, listen, Jalen Rose was a professional and a veteran on a lot of other teams, but when he was in Toronto, he was not. He was not a pro. He didn't act like a pro. In fact, he got into fights with Sam Mitchell to the point where he was benched for Joey Graham. Joey Graham and Chris Bosh came in around the same time as draft picks. And Sam Mitchell, hard-nosed Sam Mitchell, who I don't necessarily like myself, and think that he was a bad coach for the Raptors, because I've heard all kinds of crazy stories about the things he did when he was coaching the Raptors, as far as trying to tell them who they could and couldn't date and trying to fight Raptor players at practice and shit like that. Well, Sam benched Jalen Rose, and that may have been the final insult. Well, no, it wasn't, because he benched him for a Joey Graham, who was a rookie, and at that time he was pissed. He was pissed about this. So you have a disgruntled Jalen Rose on the team, and who knows what kind of bullshit he's saying to Chris Bosh. So then, all right, look, Kobe Bryant, boom, that's what the picture is today. We play the Lakers in LA one game, and Jalen Rose is guarding Kobe Bryant, and Kobe Bryant has his greatest scoring game in his entire career, 81 points. And I looked at the stats from that game again this week, and Jalen Rose was responsible for 18 of those 81 points, specifically as the primary defender. And he had the most points hung on him out of all the Raptors that day. That's embarrassing as hell. The Jalen jokes about it, and him and Kobe have done little segments since where they would talk about it together and stuff like that and reminisce. And it's a blight on Jalen Rose's career, that like it's not a good thing. That in some ways, maybe Jalen Rose wishes the Raptors, since they were so poorly managed when he was there by Rob Babcock and poorly coached by Sam Mitchell, that he wished that they had just rolled up in a ball and died and went away, that they wouldn't be in existence to remind everyone that 81 points was hung on us and that Jalen Rose was involved in it. Yeah, it could be as simple as that he wishes the Raptors didn't exist anymore just because he wants to get away from that memory in his own personal career. And then the other thing I got to say about it is he may have a little bit of a bitter taste in his mouth, because right before he got traded away from us to New York, he had one final game for the Toronto Raptors, and it was against Sacramento. And he hit the game winner to win the game for us in Toronto, and then he left. And that was that. And nobody's going to remember that final shot and that win for the Raptors. They're always going to just remember the 81. And that's a lot of it right there in a nutshell. I don't think that he ever really truly respected Canada. I don't think he really ever truly respected Toronto or the Raptors franchise while he played here, that he was just going through the motions and pining for his way to get the hell back out of here and back to the States, because he went to New York for his next year and he played a different way there. And then he went to Phoenix, had one more year, and then he was done. And it could be that he saw that his career could be over soon enough, and that he was desperate, that he was toiling in Toronto, that he did not want to be here for his end of his career. He wanted a chance to still try and do something that he had never done in his career, and he never did. And that was go get a Larry O'Brien trophy. So in a lot of ways, Toronto represents failure in his career. And that he, and it sucks because honestly, Daniel Marshall, he came here, he did similar kind of things. He scored really well, and he doesn't get that failure added to him. It's really Jalen hanging it on himself and owning it in public, because he's a public persona. He's on media. We see him, and he can opine about his experience with Kobe in the 81 game. And that is what puts it in perpetuity, is that he continues to talk about it to this day. That if he wasn't in the media and he wasn't on blast on TV, maybe we would forget about it and it would go away and forget about his connection. So in some ways, it's kind of his fault. So, all right, let me see what I wanted to get my rant first about this out and just talk about exactly why he probably hates Canada. I'm going to tell you right now, Chris Broussard is probably talking about Jalen Rose when he said, I talked to some players and this is how they feel about the team. And think about it. He really could have tainted the way Chris Bosh and Vince Carter viewed the Toronto Raptors franchise, the way he treated it, the way he was as an established vet inside the team, and the disrespect he showed for the team while he was on the team, stuff like that. So, wow, there you go. Monique is saying, she was here earlier. She's saying this game really pissed me off in every way. The dummy and the guys gave up real quick guarding him wise, and the post game was shit. And she's saying we weren't Facebook friends at that time. Yeah, this is like around 2007, something like that. This is about 15 years ago. And she's also saying, okay, so I was going to go over the Rosh or Svia's cut and out. I believe David Johnson doesn't have a chance in my book. DJ Wilson, Armani Brooks, Jeff Doughton will all fight in training camp. You may be right with Jeff in 905. Well, I was looking at it. Blake Murphy has a really good breakdown on his Twitter right now of how this whole thing with our roster is shaping up going into training camp. And I'll read it just kind of verbatim real quick, and I'll give you what I think they're going to do. The Raptors have 16 players on standard contracts right now. Ron Harper Jr. is on a two-way. Now, this two-way with Ron Harper means he is definitely on the team, and he is definitely one of our two-way players. We're going to have two-way players, and we have to decide who the other two-way player is going to be. Right now, the best candidates to be the other two-way player are Christian Coloco or Jeff Doughton. And the other guys are not eligible for the two-way slot because they're on partial guaranteed money, and the money's too large to be a two-way deal. So they could put Coloco on one of those two-way spots, and that would free things up for another roster spot because it's either going to be Coloco's going to be a full roster spot or he's going to be a two-way player. And I can actually see the benefits of going both ways. In some ways, I kind of want him to be the two-way player just because then he's with Ron Harper, and then there's not so much pressure on him on the big level because we know he's supposed to be on the 905 more. And I'd like to get him a chance to dominate the 905 as a defensive player. Like, I'd like to see Christian Coloco go the 905 this year, win Defensive Player of the Year like Chris Boucher did when he played for the 905, and just dominate down there and do things because I want to see him have an easy time with lesser talent so that we can really see the kind of things that he can do. And that he may not get as much time on the main roster team. That in some ways, I want Christian to be that second two-way player. But if he isn't, Jeff Doughton is the next best candidate for this, sure. And this would mean that he's on our team for sure and involved in our organization. That'd be smart. But in some ways, I don't know if this is what Doughton wants. That he's had G League two-way contracts already, like for Orlando and different teams. He may be wanting a guaranteed spot at this point, like 2 or 3 years into his career. That he does not want to have another year in the G League primarily. So that could be an interesting factor in all this, that they do pick Coloco to be the second two-way player, and then Doughton becomes like an add-on, the Exhibit 10 or something like that, that's fighting for a training camp spot, and then also fighting for a roster spot after that. So, but yeah, it says teams can have 20 players on deals for camp, would assume final 2 spots go to Exhibit 10 or camp competition type. So what Blake's saying is, even with all the guys we have under contract and everything like that, we had to sign Coloco officially still, that we'd still have 2 spots, and one of them could be Doughton, and then the other one could even be using the money for the MLE and getting a veteran that's not even involved in Summer League. So that is still possible. Like this, there's the one spot for Doughton, which could be an Exhibit 10 that's not really heavily invested, but gives him a good shot to still make the team. And then they could, on top of it, just go out and get another free agent, not somebody not even involved at Summer League, somebody who's just out there, anybody that's available, and sign them on top of it. That's not even somebody who has anything to do with Summer League with us. So a lot of different options still, and there's going to be heavy competition in training camp to get these roster spots on the final team. 15 players, 2 two-ways, and then 3 guys are going to get cut, just like last season when people started getting cut in training camp, like Freddie Gillespie, Ish Wainwright, stuff like that. So let's see. G saying, apparently Jazz wanted 6 picks plus players for Donovan Mitchell. That's crazy. That's crazy. All these teams are overvaluing their people. And maybe we're guilty of it here in Toronto, as what they're trying to say. We're being guilty of overvaluing Scotty right now on Twitter. They're bullshit. They're full of shit. They don't understand. They're trying to sewer his value so they can rob us to try and get him in the States and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think that they're a little bit overvaluing Donovan Mitchell. It may be that the Utah Jazz did so well with their deal with Rudy Gobert. They're like, we could do this again. Well, Gobert's a little bit of a different player than Mitchell in some ways and stuff like that. So, Top saying Jalen Rose is bitter. He was overrated when we got him, and he couldn't guard a pylon. Yeah, his defense was not good, but I think part of that's just he wasn't trying. that he was like, in some ways, he wasn't all out when he was on the Raptors. He was on cruise control. And maybe in some ways he wanted to score and make himself look good in some ways, because he did score a lot when he was here and stuff like that. Giannis here, and he is on fire with the basketball. And I think that may mean Jan's been out there hitting the hardwood and hitting the courts and hitting some baskets. Oh, yeah. Monique saying, good morning, everyone. Spot on, Lex. Thank you, Monique. You like what I said about Jalen Rose and stuff like that? Listen, I know Jalen Rose is probably a nice guy. He's had a hard time in his life, but there's a bitter man inside that body also. That there's some heartaches and sadness and different things that have happened to him in his life that make him a little bitter and that a little salty, and in particular against the Raptors. I don't understand it totally. Maybe it's the things with his father. He got arrested for a DUI in 2010. So it could be that this man has a little bit of a drinking problem also. I'm going to speculate on it, too much, but who knows what's going on with Jalen Rose. I mean, I could really bust his chops and get real insulting about him, because there's things about him that I know that aren't very nice and that we could go real deep on if we really want to get ugly. But I'm gonna be a little bit bigger person in this point right now. Tom Dukes is saying Vince Carter was the first reason I am a Raptors fan. That's awesome, Tom Duke, and good to see you on the FB there, Tommy, and stuff like that. Yeah, Vince is a big reason why a lot of people got into the Raptors, and people are really lauding Vince for his new podcast in which he attacks Chris Broussard for his views on Toronto and Canada. And I appreciate that from Vince. But also, I'm listening to this Vince Carter podcast, and the majority of it's all over the place. They talked about the Nets and Brooklyn for like half an hour, and then they talked about Toronto. This man is still not really Toronto in any kind of way. He's just like Chris Bosh. Bosh is much more happier being a part of Heat Nation. And if you go to Chris Bosh's Twitter, it's all Heat stuff. You don't see very many connections to the Raptors at this point, and that's fine. Heat Nation, you can have him. He's a champion in your team and stuff like that. And we have his part of his rookie years and stuff like, we've been talking about stuff like that. Well, Vince Carter's the same way, and it's really sad because the best part of his career is with us. His rookie year, his dunk championship, the stuff he did in the playoffs early in his career with Toronto. And then he's really Nets Nation in down low. Like, if he had to pick a nation to be a part of, Vince Carter would pick Brooklyn, guys. I hate to say it, but that's just the damn truth. That there's something that happened between what I was just talking about earlier with Jalen Rose and him leaving in that trade and then showing up in the Nets and being buddies with Dick Jefferson and Jason Kidd all of a sudden, and that three on the Nets and that synergy that he had with them. And then it was just like he's never been a team guy. He's not really a team dude. He's an NBA dude. This is the thing about Vince that always bugged me, is that he was more likely to be friends with people on the other team than his own teammates in the NBA. Like, it became the all friends league. And this was something that Barkley and Magic and Larry Bird used to say, what the hell is wrong with the NBA today? They all want to just be friends with each other. Like, we hated the other team. We hated Bird. We hated Magic. We didn't want to be buddies and like be friends outside of this. And it's really been that LeBron era. And Vince was the beginning of this. Like, honestly, he was the first one that was like all NBA friends. Everybody's friends. It was more important to be friends with the collective NBA fraternity and top players than your own team and having that connection with your team, like our Raptors do now. Like, back then, it was like the league was more important to him than the NBA, the team he played for, is what I'm saying. So Vince, a lot of people are really applauding him for defending us and saying these things, but it's honestly too little too late. And he really is still doing damage to us as far as the way he does broadcast for ESPN. When he does color commentary, he's very biased against the Raptors still. So I can't give Vince very many flowers, even though some people are saying, oh, Vince is so great this week because he's defending us from Chris Broussard. Whatever. It's like everybody's doing this. It's like it's easy to pile on somebody who has such a horrible take. And that's what happened here and stuff like that. So Monique's saying, glad videos. Carter did the interview with Ross so deep. I watched that whole thing you posted yesterday, Monique, that 40-minute podcast with Vince Carter. And, he's annoying to me. He's just annoying to me because I remember Vince. I remember how much we enjoyed him being on the team. He was our dude. He was like Scotty to me at a time. The way I feel about Scotty Barnes right now, I felt that way about Vince Carter in 2000. And it sucks. It's sad to see, like, so much has changed, so much has been broken, that in some ways I know that he's still good with us and he'll still show up. And a lot of the fans they've forgiven him and all this kind of stuff, but I can't. I just can't. Just because it's just cardinal sin what he did to the Raptors. And it's something that nobody should ever have the audacity to admit to the press. It's one thing to do it on the secret and not try on the secret, on the down low, and not tell anyone. That's one thing. But to have the audacity to come out to the press and just say it, like, be proud of it. Yeah, I didn't try the last couple of years that I was in Toronto. That's really horrible. And it doesn't make us look bad. It makes you look bad. And that's what I'm saying. These guys with their legacies, Vince Carter and Jalen Rose, they made themselves look bad with the way they handled themselves with Toronto and their exits and the way they acted here and stuff like that. So that's why I say this about them, stuff like that. G saying we need Downton. He is on the Downton train. Woo! Yeah, we're on that Downton train. He's the most consistent guy in summer league so far. We want that consistency for a bench. Then let's look to the light of consistency that is Jeff Doughton Jr. because the man is passing and shooting, and he's picking the right one at the right time, and he's looking really effective as a good player in this league. And we don't want to lose him. Like, I want to get this dude on our team because I have a feeling he's going to go to another team and he's going to look real good on another team if we don't. So Monique's saying, other than Alvin Williams and Mo Pete, the only two that I think that should always cover Raptors. Alvin, for sure. Alvin's a real one. And like, Alvin's a weird one because he's kind of turned his back on Philadelphia, his hometown, and now he's more Toronto man. And he said it. He's like, I'm Toronto, baby, now. And like Philly, in some ways, he's not Philly anymore. He doesn't appreciate Philadelphia in some ways like he appreciates Toronto. And Mo Pete was great doing announcing when he did for the while that he did, but it just didn't take. And, I'm sure Morris has other great things going on. But listen, I will never get down on these two gentlemen. These two, to me, are real Raptors. These two are real ones that I will love forever, and there will always be Raptor legends to me that are in good standing. Alvin Williams and Morris Peterson, for sure. Monique's saying, thanks for the deep dive on the roster. Yeah, I mean, there's more that Blake has kind of written in here. He's saying that the Raptors have once again built an end of roster structure that will facilitate a camp competition for the final spots. Champagny has $325,000 guaranteed. Banton $300,000 guaranteed. Wilson $250,000 guaranteed. Brooks $50,000 guaranteed, but $250,000 after August 1st. All those deals become fully guaranteed if the player makes the team. So even though we're signing these contracts this week, we signed 2 contracts yesterday, Ron Harper Jr. and Justin Champagny. Only one of those guys are guaranteed a spot on this team, and that's Ron Harper Jr. because he's a two-way. The two-way is already in, is basically what it's saying. And in fact, that may have been part of the way we had to get Ron Harper, that there may have been other teams that wanted Ron Harper Jr., but he was negotiating with different teams, and the Raptors had to come to him. He's like, well, I want a guarantee that I won't just make it to your training camp. I want to make sure that I'm on the team. And this is the way they do it. They said, well, we'll put you on a two-way contract right away. And boom, that's a guarantee that Ron Harper Jr. will be playing for the 905 and splitting time with the Raptors. So that's different than Justin's. Justin can still be not on the team this year, even though he signed this contract yesterday. I'm going to tell you all that right now. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be an interesting competition going into the season to see who gets those spots. Oh, yeah. Shane Waters saying, morning, friends. Out of all the Fab Five from Michigan, Jalen was my favorite back in the day. He was a smart player with a deadly shot. Now he's just an idiot, shooting verbal diarrhea out of his mouth. Shane Waters, wow. See, that's a turn of events. This is a man who loves the Fab Five, loves University of Michigan. And like that was an amazing team. Juwan Howard, Chris Webber, Jimmy King, Jalen Rose. These dudes were real time. Jimmy King, original Raptors draft pick, and now we got DJ Wilson on our team from Michigan. Hopefully, maybe that ingratiates them a little bit more to us because Jalen Rose is still a huge Michigan guy. and that maybe having DJ Wilson on our team will help him maybe like us a little bit better and stuff like that. But yeah, listen, that's so crazy how things can happen like that. It hasn't really happened to me with many basketball players, but it has at times. I can't think of one off the top of my head right now, but it's happened to me with wrestlers where they're guys that I really, really love and appreciate that wrestled. And then over time, I find out more and more about them and they're jackasses and I hate them. And one of those is Chris Jericho at this point. I hate Chris Jericho at this point. I used to love Chris Jericho. Early WCW, when he was in the WWE at first, Y2J. And in the last 20 years, he has evolved in pestering, gross, diarrhea of the mouth person on in wrestling. Stuff like that. Good morning from Evelyn, Granny Evelyn. Good morning. You're with baby Candace watching from Blue Mountain. Wow, Granny Evelyn. Good morning, baby Candace. I hope you're having a pleasant morning with Granny Evelyn and you're enjoying my stream. I hope you can't understand any of my curse words if I am cussing. Top saying, I know you said you wanted bigger guards, but Downton deserves a spot with the big club. He has been the best player on the summer league team. Top, listen, I don't even consider Downton totally a small guard. The way his body is built is different. Like, look at him. Like, you look at Delano Banton. Now, he's 6'8", 6'7", and he's got these nice long arms, long legs, that length. Well, Downton has the same kind of length at his height. I swear he is not 6'3". This is the kind of thing where they're measuring his height with his shoes off. And then when he puts his shoes on, he's another inch or two higher. Like, he could be like 6'4", 6'5". And the other thing, if you look at Downton, much like Armani Brooks, he has very long arms for his frame and that he uses that length. So I don't necessarily count Downton as a small guard. In fact, I would count him as a big guard like Gary Trent Jr. in comparison to guys like Malachi and Armani Brooks. So he does not fall outside of my rule for not wanting a big guard. In fact, he fits better with it because he gives us a nice point guard that's a traditional point guard, but he's a longer point guard and maybe a little bit more reined in and capable in some ways than Delano Banton, but it's a different look for a point guard in some ways also, but he's still long also. So yeah, he fits. He's not going to be outside of the thing where I'm saying, and to me, he's a bigger guard somehow, some weird way. Maybe it's partly the way he plays. So Monique saying he broke up with Molly Morrison, by the way, Lex. Yeah, I wasn't going to get into the personal stuff with Jalen. He was with an ESPN reporter that he dated for like a long time, and they're getting a divorce. They got a divorce last year and stuff like that. Who knows what's going on with Jalen? I don't want to get into his personal life too much. But yeah, there's that kind of stuff. Julian, thank you for stating that these young people do not understand how Vince Carter set the Raptors back a few years with his departure. Yes, Julian, it's true because listen, you know what it was? It was a respect thing. That the Raptors had no respect in the league whatsoever because we were like the purple dinosaurs. We had purple jerseys. We looked goofy. We were losing a lot in the 90s. And then Vince got drafted to us, and he was a superstar. He was electric. He came in and he was dunking and he put us on the map. He brought attention to our team. He did all these things. He had the Air Canada effect and he gave us respectability. Him and Charles Oakley and Kevin Willis. These guys came in and they made us a playoff team and we played well. We won a playoff series. We won some stuff. And, that was building the respect for our franchise. Well, then all this stuff happened. We're like, all right, Kevin O'Neal, Rob Babcock, Sam Mitchell, Jalen Rose, the stuff I was just describing, where everything kind of went to shit with our management and just being poorly managed and different things were happening with the Raptors at the time that, he didn't respect our team and he left and he made a joke out of our team when he left. So basically everything he built up as far as respect for us around the league was crushed down like a sandcastle on the beach. Like he just wiped it out and left. And even since after he left, he went to New Jersey and he started playing way better all of a sudden. And he even publicly was slighting the Raptors in different ways, like on the down low, just by the way he talked about them and different things like that in the franchise. And he's continued to do that even since being a player as a broadcaster. And that's the part of things that I'm talking about, is that he's hurt our respectability ever since he left, ever since he got traded to the New Jersey Nets that day. He has hurt our respectability ever since. And that everything about the Raptors today really shouldn't be counted towards Vince Carter. That it took Chris Bosh failing and having his problems in the middle there, and then Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan showing up and being, those were the men that built up the real respect for the Toronto Raptors franchise that we should be concluding, because Vince destroyed what he built up before he left. And that's just the damn truth of it. Some people want to give him so much credit for building up the Raptors. Well, he built us up and then he destroyed us. And then we got built back up again by Kyle and DeMar. So that's the way I look at it. So that's why I'll give them credit all day long. And Vince, yeah, sure, he had an Eric Carter effect where young players came up all of a sudden and started playing in Canada. But he also really hurt the franchise bad in the middle of the 2000s. So Marlon Toby saying, Lex, I'm glad you mentioned Bosh. Some people on Twitter had the gall to question, is Chris Bosh a better player than Pascal Siakam? Shaking my head. I am shaking my head too. Yeah, that is just, it's a take that is interesting, because in some ways that is a good argument, because statistically Chris Bosh is better than Pascal Siakam in some ways. He has better numbers. He does not have better record. He did not have better success in the playoffs. He won rings with Miami afterwards, but he wasn't a champion here in Toronto like Pascal Siakam. So there's a lot of different things here. And once again, Chris Bosh is the same thing. He went to Miami, he totally forgot about us and like turned his back on us for many years. Sure, he's come back through and we're like kind of okay with him in different ways. He's fine, but he's not helped our respectability either, because when he left, it was a similar kind of thing to Vince. He kind of put us down and made us look bad and was not like rooting for us to not be good after he left, obviously, because he did want us to have success, because he wanted us to be just as bad as when he was here. And well, that changed. DeMar and Kyle were able to build us up and stuff like that. And I'm sure that Chris Bosh and Jalen Rose were not happy about the Raptors being successful all of a sudden and starting to get better. And then boom, when we won a championship, some of these guys were probably like, oh, Jalen was like, oh, this is not good, because this means this team is a bona fide, they're a champion now and stuff like that. So I know that Vince in his podcast was talking about him and Tracy being at the game, watching the Raptors win their championship, and how impressed and how they came from so far. They were remembering when they were on the team and where the Raptors were then, and now seeing them win a banner in Golden State in Game 6. They were at that game, and Vince was at that atmosphere when we won. And that must have been surreal and weird. And he was very positive about the Raptors when he's retelling this story. But also, I got to think that he was probably one of those guys that was picking the Golden State Warriors to win that series at the beginning of it. So let's just put it that way and stuff like that. So Isaac Campbell saying, Jose Calderon is my favorite Raptor. We should talk about Jose way, way more. Honestly, this is a Raptor Freak channel. We can talk about Raptors at any era, especially since we're talking about Jalen Rose on the deep dive today. Jose was a really great Raptor on the down low. Like, this is the thing about Jose, was he was a free agent signing. In fact, he may be in the best free agent signing we ever made in our history, because he came from out of nowhere and he was a badass. And when he came in, he was a top level point guard in the NBA. He had very little assists. Very little turnovers and very high assists. He shot an amazing percentage from the field and from the free throw line. Just an amazing, great Raptor, and somebody that we don't talk enough about. In fact, I love the fact that one of our champions was Marc Gasol, and that him and Jose Calderon have a great long friendship from being on the Spanish national team. And that Marc Gasol winning a championship with the Raptors is kind of a legacy linkage to Jose Calderon and Jorge Garbajosa and their connections to the Raptors and the Spanish team with Marc Gasol. So he brought Calderon back around. And Isaac, I have a lot of respect for you that is your favorite Raptor of all time, Jose Calderon, because he's another great one. Another one that never turned his back on us and has always been a real one. For the Raptors, and he's in good standing for sure. Marlon Toby is saying Pascal stayed and won a ring with the Raptors. Bosh left to go to Miami. Yeah, I can't fault Bosh in some ways for what he did, because he took the easy route. And he saw they orchestrated this crap from the Olympics. They were on the Olympic team, and like a year or so before, they planned this. And Pat Riley's like, yeah, I'll land this plane for y'all and get all three of y'all here and stuff like that. It was not good for the league. It was good for those individuals. It was good for Miami at that time, but it wasn't good for the league overall. And it's kind of dwindling out. Like, I really see that Miami Big Three that was formed with them going to South Beach and the Big Three in Brooklyn last year as the bookends of the Big Three kind of era of where it is. It's like that was the big start of it. I mean, the preamble was the Boston one, but the Miami one was really the big one that really made super teams in. And then now we've gone through this decade of super teams, and now we've seen how they crumble and how they're fail on building a team. They're not a surefire bet for championships. They're not a surefire bet for winning. That we've seen it now with these super teams that LeBron tried to build in Lakers and Brooklyn in the last couple years. So that's what I hope, is that these are the bookends of this era, that we're getting the last end of it because of what the failure of the Brooklyn Nets experiment. All right, let's see what else. Monique's saying, you can tell Ron got emotional talking to Paul Jones on Raptors today. Oh, that's cool. I haven't seen that clip yet. I'll have to go look at that. Yeah, Ron Harper Jr., I'm really super impressed with him in all kinds of ways. When he got signed yesterday, the amount of people that were showing love to him and him reposting them was amazing. He has so many people that are rooting for him. He has so much fan support in all kinds of different places, whether it's Rutgers, whether it's Filipino Nation, whether it's regular Raptor Nation like us. He has so many people behind him and wishing him well. And I think there's something about him. I'm telling you guys, I have a real weird feeling about Ron Harper Jr. and how special he is and what he's going to be doing for us in the future, that he's going to be making huge clutch plays for us. And he's going to help us in some weird ways that we didn't even realize. Top saying, I was happy when we switched Jamison for Vince in the draft because Vince was a monster athlete at my team in college, UNC. Jamison was good there, but VC was a beast athlete. I was so happy with that trade also. It was weird to me when they picked Jamison, but then really quickly they turned around and traded him for Vince Carter, and that was a huge deal. I went to Florida State at the same time that Vince was going to UNC. And I was going to school to the basketball games, and I saw Vince and Antoine play up close because I went to FSU UNC games and sat at courtside. So top of top, I saw Vince right up close before he even was a Raptor. And I was talking trash to him because I was a Seminole. I was FSU. And I was telling him, you suck, Carter. And he heard me, and he got really pissed off, and he started killing us. Like, he started bombing threes and dunking all over us, and he killed us, and UNC won the game. But yeah, it was funny because I was jeering Vince Carter the first time I was at a game with him playing and really coming down hard on him. But I thought that was a great deal. Now, Jamison ended up having a really long NBA career, and it's weird. He's so underrated in the whole picture of the NBA. Like, they don't talk about Antoine Jamison enough. That the man scored like 20,000 points in the league or something like that. He had a really long, good career, but he's so understated, and they don't talk about him. Nobody ever brings him up, but he did. He had a really good NBA career, and people don't realize it on the down low. It's maybe partly because of the Washington years, the different years at different teams he was on that were really not that in the spotlight or very good. But yeah, that was a great trade. And I'm glad the Raptors made that trade because there wouldn't have been no Air Canada effect if that trade hadn't happened and stuff like that. Tom Duke is saying Vince is still arguably the best Raptor ever, just like Michael Jackson is still the king of pop. I don't like either, to be honest. All right. I can argue this. I don't think Vince is the best Raptor ever. I think that he may be one of the most famous Raptors ever. That he may be one of the most important Raptors ever, but I don't think he's the best Raptor ever. I mean, I'll make this argument for Kyle Lowry every day. That best, greatest, it's kind of the same word. And that's why I say the GOAT is Kyle Lowry right now. But it could be Scotty Barnes in the future and stuff like that. But the GOAT is right now is Kyle Lowry and stuff like that. I don't know. I really discount Vince more than other people do because when Vince was doing what he was doing, and I know, Tom, you're a little bit older than me, I was in my 20s already. And, I wasn't a little kid that bought into him like little kids would, like with this mystical kind of like, oh, it's Vince Carter and all this stuff. I was already old enough to kind of understand the NBA and had like 15 years of watching it by the time I saw Vince Carter play in the NBA. So I was already kind of like, it's not that I loved him and I was like, oh, this is so great, but it really hurt what he did. Like I was in the Vince Carter fan club. I had his shirts. I was really into Vince. Like I had all kinds of Vince stuff. And it hurt when he turned his back on us and the way it all went down and stuff like that. And I really still haven't totally forgiven him. That when he retired, it helped, but then he's still broadcasting and still doing things to hurt us. So it's like, it's tough. I can't give him too much credit. Sorry, I just can't. It's hard for me. Top saying, what do you think will ultimately happen with KD? Are the Pelicans our biggest threat? Yeah, they are now because Ayton went and got the offer sheet with Indiana, and Phoenix has matched it. They matched the offer. So DeAndre Ayton's not going anywhere. He's staying in Phoenix. They can't trade him until like February. So this really hinders Phoenix's opportunity to try and trade to get Kevin Durant. It's really fun what happened because Indiana really forced Phoenix's hand as far as being a trade partner in the KD sweepstakes. And now they're not going to be able to be. There's no way because they're not going to take any of the rest of the guys for KD. That Ayton probably had to be in the deal going to Brooklyn for them to make it work. So now the Pelicans, in a way, are the biggest rival with the Raptors, but I don't think anything's going to happen. I think that Jerry West is the one who will know that he's saying he doesn't see Kevin Durant getting moved and that they're going to have to run it back with him on the team with them. Kyrie's more likely to get traded at this point than Kevin Durant, the way it's looking and stuff like that. So G saying, after hearing all of this again, even though I lived through it, makes me appreciate Masai so much more. Oh my gosh. Yes, G. Yes. I mean, that is the thing. Like the way the Raptors were in that period with Kevin O'Neal and Rob Babcock is the way a lot of teams are right now. Like you could say Charlotte, you could say, the Knicks in some ways. There's like, this, you don't want this dysfunction on your team because it really hurts your team. In fact, that's the way that players need to be looking at teams. They need to be looking at whether the team is competent, whether they're like functional, whether they're working well together, whether they have a good vibe, it's a good environment, because you can go to a team and waste a couple years on a contract and go nowhere, even if you're a top talent, because the team has toxic problems in it. That's why my dumpster fire ratings, they may be becoming the most important power rankings of all in the NBA, is because dumpster fires really do implicate or cause people to not win championships. The Lakers, the Nets this year, dumpster fires. And that's what it is right there. So, I appreciate Masai so much, guys. Honestly, like I thanked him to his face. I said, thank you for making my team real and good and building it like this. I shook his hand when I met him and I said, thank you, Masai, for making this team respectable and good. Oh my gosh. And this was like in 2013 when I thanked him. This was like right after he first got there and the first couple of deals he did. Let's see. G saying Vincent McGrady in an interview did say they regret that they left. Yeah, they both did. I think in particular, McGrady really regretted it, because he didn't understand that him and Vince could have done something really special and that we could have won our first championship if McGrady had stayed and really worked together with Vince. But this was part of this is why the press is so dangerous, and what things like Chris Bouchard and Jalen and Jacoby are doing is dangerous because it shapes public opinion and view perspective. And at that time, the press was telling Tracy that there's no way that they could coexist on the Raptors together, that they were too big of two young, good stars. And this was the way the NBA was doing this to pry one of them out and give them to another team, like Orlando ended up getting McGrady. That was something that they didn't want Toronto to be too good too fast. And they may have saw it starting to happen. So they put out a bunch of subterfuge in press saying, how can Carter and McGrady coexist together as stars? There can only be one superstar. And this is before the whole big three with Miami or Boston. And so that they didn't have any idea like that they could do that. And that McGrady may have been misinformed in that way, that he may have stayed if he knew that they could have coexisted together, but he left because he thought Vince was too big and he'd be in his shadow. And that he regrets that. I don't think Vince regrets he may regret how he left and how it went down, but I don't think he regrets leaving Toronto, unfortunately. I think they both regret that they didn't get the opportunity to try and do it together, is what it is. Summer Lowe saying Vince is fake. Don't buy his take at all. Yeah, I read him too, Summer, yesterday. When I watched the podcast, he is coming off as a little fake. And also, when he's doing these podcasts, he's an announcer on TV. He shouldn't be stammering so much. He should be more smooth with his delivery and letting the words come out of his mouth, because there's too much kind of blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, it's hard for me to listen to him for too long on his podcast, listening to him, because he just he's not very clear with his communication, is what I'll say. G saying Jose still has property in Toronto. I believe that. I mean, he shows up every once in a while, and like he's just in the air. He's at Scotiabank Arena all of a sudden for a game. And you're just like, oh, Jose's here. He's just here at the game, stuff like that. It's pretty cool. Monique saying you were right on the Asian hate in Simu charity game. That was such a successful game. It looked like it was very packed at the place that they had it. The people that were there had a good time. It was a lot of action packed. They raised some good money, and it just looked like it was a really fun time and stuff like that. I'm so happy that Jeremy Lin's celebrity charity game went so well and stuff like that. And every single day, guys, just be a champion against hate of all types of hate. You know, whether it's transgender hate, Asian hate, black hate, whoever hate, just be a hater of those haters. And let's be the counterbalance and step up, and don't stand on the sidelines. You see something ugly happening around you. Go ahead and be an advocate and step in and be a person for what's right. Because in today's society, people are emboldened and they're doing hateful things right out in front of us. We need to be the people that can be defensive stoppers to help them also. Because if you're in Chinatown and you're walking and you see a little old Asian lady getting harassed by somebody on the street, and you're somebody like me and you're about 6'3", and you can get in there and just make a little bit of intimidation or maybe be a little bit of a bully to the bully, go ahead and be a bully to the bully, because these are the people that need our help, the people that are getting subjugated to this hate in different places. And we ain't about that. No, we ain't. No, we ain't, especially in Toronto. That's right. Summer Lowe saying Bosh got hit in the nose and then missed the rest of the playoffs. Didn't seem like he cared. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It really sets the tone when your veterans in your locker room are disgruntled, or they're just not good quality leaders, as far as like maybe they don't like the team they're on because they got traded to them, Jalen Rose, and they're disgruntled, and that their leadership and veteranship rubs off on a young player like Chris Bosh and makes him not really respect the team that he plays for on the down low, because he sees an older veteran player not really respect the team also, and stuff like that. I think that's part of it. That like Bosh never really fully went all in with us like Scotty has. Scotty seems like he's gone all in with us, but Bosh had kind of held back the whole time, just a little bit, certain things with the Raptors and stuff. And that may be partly because he came in as a rookie and Jalen Rose was already on the team and stuff like that. He's a horrible leader on this team for showing these young guys. And it may have really shaped Bosh's image of Toronto in some ways that we didn't even realize, guys. So good morning to Sue. She's saying good morning to everybody. Monique's saying news and notes. Scotty's loving Montreal. Yeah, we seen him on the ground walking around downtown in Montreal. And, I seen the thing that Kevin Durant posted about going to Montreal in the past, talking about how it wasn't like back in the day, there was no basketball knowledge there. It was very much a hockey town. Everybody speaks French. Now there's a little bit more basketball fans there because of the Raptors championship and things like that. But Kevin could go there and be just himself and nobody would recognize him. That he could go and hang out in Montreal and do things out on the town and nobody gave a crap who he was, because it was a hockey town. It was French. There was not basketball thing, and that was really liberating to an NBA player. That you go anywhere, if you get cited, people know you are. Well, maybe that's why Scotty's there. It's like he kind of wants to test that and see if he can get out of the bubble and be a normal person again in Montreal, because it's not necessarily the biggest. I think he's going to find that they're going to find him anyway. That it's not the way it used to be when Kevin was there and he could go unnoticed. That he's going to be noticed there, because like he's really on blast in Canada, and Montreal is becoming a great basketball city. since Kevin Durant probably went there. That people are into the Raptors. People are probably into getting their own team. Now they have a CBL team and stuff like that. So I don't know how much Scotty can be anonymous in Montreal like Kevin used to be able to. So it's cool that he's there. And I love that he's just like enjoying himself and having a good time. So be safe, Scotty, and just have fun. That's what I will say to Scotty Barnes in Montreal. Evelyn saying good morning to Sue. Tom saying happy Friday, Sue, and everyone. Just to be clear, not a big VC fan. Tom, you can be a big VC fan. I don't mind people that love Vince Carter. And you're right. That is the gateway that got a lot of people into the Raptors, is the Vince Carter effect and stuff like that. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. I just want to give a whole perspective to the whole legacy of Vince Carter and be fair about it, as far as from a Raptor diehard, passionate Raptors first fan. That like, this is how I see the landscape with Vince Carter, that I can see both the good and the bad with him. He's an important part of our history. I love him in some ways. I think he's really important for what happened here, but also in the same ways, like I said, he took that sandcastle and knocked it down when he left in that trade to the New Jersey Nets. Really bad. Lolita's saying, love Kyle Lowry as the best Raptors ever. He stayed. He left when he believed that Freddie's ready. He's a champion with us. He checked all the boxes. He loves us. Yeah, he left us in good shape. He didn't like just up and like strand us. He taught Fred. He had an apprentice. And then also he worked it out with the management to make a really good deal that fit him and helped him for what he wanted and helped us also. All around just badassery by Kyle Lowry, his career with the Raptors. The whole journey of it, everything about it was just glorious and storybook kind of stuff. So yeah, Kyle's the man. And look, have you seen how he looks this week? He's dropped some pounds. So maybe he's listening to Pat Riley and his critique about his body at the end of the season, because Kyle's looking real skinny right now and in shape. So I think he's taking him seriously. It's like, maybe Kyle's like, you know what, this is Pat Riley. I better listen to him. So it's that kind of thing. Sue saying, Vince Carter was saying all the right things the other day and stuck up for the Raps over Broussard. Spewing nonsense, but there is still something I don't totally trust or believe that VC has our back, it seemed like. The PC thing for him to do, but I hope I'm wrong. No, I got that vibe too. And Summer's saying the same thing. She feels like he's being fake. I get that vibe. Like there's something between him and his co-host, the lady who's doing the show with him, that's very not genuine. That there's something like they're ESPN personalities. Let's just put it that way. And it may be that ESPN personalities go to school on how to be personalities in certain ways. And there's maybe some unspoken rules about the Raptors and how we're supposed to be treated. And then sometimes they can turn it off and speak glowingly about the Raptors, but maybe most of the time they're supposed to be on autopilot to just diss or ignore or get us wrong or do whatever the way that they normally everybody does it on ESPN. So I really think that it's a mandated corporate kind of thing by ESPN to the way they treat the Raptors specifically, and that they're doing their job in a way. And some of them more gleefully are into it, like doing it in the way that like Jalen's doing it. And some of them are kind of like not, and maybe they just ignore us more and they don't really just talk about it. Because obviously every time we watch a game that is broadcast from the United States and the Raptors are involved, the announce crew always announces from the perspective of the team we're playing. That they're always talking about how they could come back and win. They're always previewing them before the game. They're always doing more spotlight and footage on that team. And that if they have to do stuff on us, it's kind of almost begrudgingly and stuff like that. So I think, yeah, there's something a little fishy about that interview. There were some tells from his face and the way he was talking and different things like that, that I'm like, yeah, there's something fake about that. And it's interesting that Summer Lowe picked up on that also, and that Sue is kind of sussing it a little bit herself. Monique saying, happy game day. Let's go Raptors. All right. Monique's all business. Let's do this right now. The Raptors are playing tonight. Let's do a preview. Miami Heat, 10 p.m. 10 p.m. Well, at least it's a Friday night, so we can all sleep in on Saturday. But yeah, they're going to play Miami tonight. And this is a weird Miami team. In fact, this team may be worse than the Chicago Bulls team that we lost to earlier this week. That they don't have any players on this team that were actually drafted. There's one, Jovic. Nikola Jovic, but they've already shut him down for summer league. Like he hasn't even played the last 2 or 3 games for them. So I don't expect them to play any player that has actually been drafted into the NBA. Every single player on their roster is undrafted, and it's crazy. And they're all no-name guys. Like I'm looking at their summer league roster, and it's no name, no name, no name. Like the only guy whose name is Omer Yurtseven, who's been on their team for a couple years now, but he's not even playing. He's hurt, so he hasn't even been playing in the games. Like their best player is Michael Mulder, a 3-year pro who's been on the Heat a little bit, but he's really the end of bench guy who's barely played. He's 28 years old though, but he has been like their best player. And then there's Haywood Highsmith, Javonte Smart, but there really isn't any names on this Miami Heat team, and they have lost most of their games. They're like 1-2 or 1-3 or something like that. They're 1-2. They're not a team that has been winning, but their one win was against the Celtics. So it should be interesting. We need to kick their ass because there are some teams that have already gotten to the 3-1 threshold as far as they finish their 4 games, and there's like 5 teams that are 3-1 right now. And according to the standings, it looks like Portland and Chicago are online to play in the championship game out of those teams. So hey, I mean, we got to get enough points by beating Miami by a good enough margin tonight to qualify for this team. So we got to beat Miami tonight. And not only that, we got to beat them by a huge margin. Like if we can beat them by like 20 or 30 points tonight, then we might be able to get into the Summer League Championship. So it's going to really depend on that. So not only do we have to beat them, we got to rout them. So that's what we need to do to win, to get a championship game. Sue saying hi to everybody. Tom Duke saying, woo, go Raptors. And 100% Raptor mascot matchups this year. He's looking forward. Tom Duke is looking forward to the Raptor mascot matchup. Yeah, that'll be fun. When we get back into that, Tom, we got to figure out what happened in that curling game. That is so long ago. Isaac Campbell saying, remember we had Keon Clark during those years? His length would be a good fit with the team today. Well, Keon Clark had issues. And yeah, I do remember Keon Clark. I got a Keon Clark jersey on the wall over here. Yeah, you know what? His length was badass and he could block a lot of shots. But is Koloko kind of like Keon Clark in some ways, but maybe with a little bit more muscle on him and a little bit more promise, maybe a little bit more offensive skills and passing skills and different things that Keon Clark had. So I would say Koloko is that dude at this point. Chris Boucher in some ways is very Keon Clark-ish also in some ways. So Monique saying no to KD. The longer it takes, I get more happy about it. CP24 talked to Vegas odds and it's really low now. Yeah, I think that this is pretty much dead in the water. That we're just going about our business the way we should be doing it, the way we were going to do it before this whole Kevin Durant distraction started up a couple weeks ago. And that things are going to be a little bit more to normal. And I think it really does have a lot to do with Ayton making the decision that he made in the last day. So that is going to make things settle down. And hopefully, you know, I don't care if he gets moved. In fact, I kind of want Brooklyn to keep him and them to just be a dumpster fire within and have him kind of not really happy that he's there. Because there's something about requesting a trade and then going through all the rigmarole of trying to find one, getting frustrated, not getting it to happen, and then having to stay and play. And that clock is ticking on that watch for as long as his career is going to be going for that much longer. That's a valuable year that, you know, he's not getting any younger and that he wants to be in a better position. The Brooklyn Nets, I don't necessarily think they're a championship contender if they try and run it back with what they've got. And that he may be in his mind thinking, I'm wasting valuable time to try and catch up to LeBron and Steph with the championships and stuff like that. So Kevin's a little more desperate in this situation than anybody, than the Brooklyn Nets, than the Toronto Raptors. It's Kevin Durant himself who is desperate to win more championships. And that is part of it right there. Lolita is saying, reality check, back in those days, the players didn't want to be here. Now the management of Raptors did such a good job. The younger players know that we are the place to be. Thanks, Raptors. That's true in a lot of ways. I mean, there was something attractive about being on the Raptors when Vince was here. And Oakley and Kevin Willis and Del Curry and Muggsy Bogues and Alvin Williams. Those guys, those veterans, they really were being pros. They were professionals, and they came here and they wanted to win. And Oakley, I love Oakley. I love Muggsy. I love Dell. These guys took it seriously. And that was the first time we actually had some respect and professionalism on our team. And those guys were the guys that should have been teaching Vince throughout his whole career, and the ones that he should have listened to more, instead of getting these jackasses in later like Jalen Rose that caused more of these issues. But it's true. Like when we went from Glenn Grunwald to Rob Babcock, that was a huge downgrade. And then also the coaching got worse. Like Lenny Wilkins was an okay coach. He was a player's coach. He didn't really he wasn't a tough coach. He let these guys, because they had a lot of pros that were seasoned, like Oakley and Dell on the team. He let them kind of run things and go on their own. And he was kind of hands off and kind of just let them do their thing. He's a player's coach. And that worked for that. And then Butch Carter came in. He did his thing for a bit. And then, we got into Kevin O'Neal and then Sam Mitchell. And that was bad. Those guys were really bad in the middle there and stuff like that. And yeah, there were no loyalty, no allegiance, and no respect for the team in a lot of ways. But when Oakley and those guys were here, there was at that point. There was a time that was kind of respectable to be a Raptor. But that went away, and then it even got worse, obviously, with what I was saying that Vince did and stuff like that. Leslie is saying, VC was the introduction to young people 22 years ago and making basketball relevant in Canada. The dunk contest was everything for us because it made us all take notice. 22 years later, there's so many Canadian players in the NBA. Yes, it's such a great documentary, The Carter Effect. Like, I highly recommend everybody go watch The Carter Effect and understand how he had an impact on people like Andrew Wiggins. It's an amazing thing. It's a really amazing thing. And I love Vince for that aspect of his things. If we could just have Vince Carter for his career from like 99 till before he stopped trying, I would love him forever. It's just really, if we had just not had that other stuff, oh man, it would have been so easy to make him one of my favorite Raptors for all time and forever. And this sucks. It's really hard to deal with. Monique saying Bargnani fits in today's NBA era. Just imagine if he came back, had to bring it up. Yeah, Bargnani does fit in today's era way, way better. He's just a little ahead of his time and stuff like that. And it could be that we were kind of already ahead of things. Like we're seeing El Mago and we're like, this guy is the kind of player that the NBA is going to go towards, but it wasn't ready and it wasn't totally there yet. And the defensive and the rebounding stuff was really kind of important at that time in the NBA still. And when the problem was really a Bargnani Bosh combo, that they were both similar bigs that were not good at certain things that bigs need to be good at. And that's low post defense and rebounding. Now, Chris got a lot of rebounds, and Bargnani he should have got way more for his size, but it still didn't matter. They were horrible in the low post. We got 8 and alive near the basket all the time, and there just wasn't a good pairing of having two of your top franchise players be those two guys, so offensive minded but so not defensive minded. That really set the tone for our team and hurt us, and it wasn't good general managing in a way. And stuff like that. So, David, I don't know if The Carter Effect is still on Netflix. I think it was at some point. I would just look around and try and find it somewhere. You'll find it. You'll find it somewhere. And it'll probably be in some sort of way that you can watch it and don't have to pay or something like that, hopefully. All right. So I talked about the game tonight. We got to beat Miami, rout them. Because if that's the only way we're going to have a chance to play in the Summer League Championship and get those rings that Seymour Pape wants so bad. And then once again, talking about the Blake Murphy tweets about what we're doing with our roster. We do have a two-way spot that we're going to have to put on somebody. And the only people that are really eligible for it are either Koloko or Downton or one of these other guys that are on the Summer League team that hasn't got a contract already offered to them. So I'm really thinking that, to me personally, I think Koloko should get it. If he doesn't, then it should definitely be Downton and stuff like that. So, and then one more thing, just real quick. Jalen Rose, he's a hater. I advise all Raptor fans to just ignore him. If you see the name Jalen Rose involved in anything, don't even look at it. Don't even open it up. Don't look at it. They are specifically trolling us this week. They want us to leave whiny voicemails of being upset with what they're saying on their show. That is all troll move and stuff like that. Don't give in to them. Don't feed them the power. Don't feed them the hate or the anguish or the sadness. Just ignore them. That's the best way you can deal with anything that's annoying or wrong or stuff like that, is you just don't give it any attention. and stuff like that. Now, one more little fun fact about Jalen Rose that I found out in my research for today is I did not realize this, but both Jalen Green and Jalen Suggs are both named after Jalen Rose. This is very much true that their mothers liked Jalen Rose and the name Jalen, and they named their sons after Jalen Rose. So there you go. There's a factoid for you. Jalen Suggs and Jalen Green were both named after him. Then there's other players that were named after him that weren't as notable and stuff like that. So he said, all right, Lolita wants me to do a Masai imitation. All right, I'll do a Masai imitation. How you doing? You ready to win? You ready to win? All right. All right, I'll see you. There you go. There you go, Lolita. That's the easiest Masai Ujiri impression that I can do. All right, y'all. Have a great Friday. Appreciate y'all coming and joining me. We'll have a reaction to the game tomorrow in the morning, 9:30 a.m. And also, Share Love Club, Yuta Watanabe. I want to say goodbye to him and give him the love that he deserves from Raptors Nation before it's too late. Because we know that Yuta's not coming back this season. And I want to make sure he gets a Share the Love Club this summer. So we're doing Yuta Watanabe tomorrow. So if you love Yuta and you're going to miss him because he's not going to be on the Raptors this year, come in and let's share memories about his time with the Raptors and why he will always be a loved cult hero on the Raptors fan history. That he is like Bismack Biyombo. He is a legend, and he is somebody that we will celebrate and love forever here in Toronto. So tomorrow, Share the Love Club, Yuta Watanabe, and we will react to the Summer League game against the Miami Heat tonight at 10 p.m. So please join me tomorrow in the morning. I appreciate everybody for being here, and let's go Raptors, baby! Win against Miami, get the Summer League rings, get the